We have no consensus on this issue in our Republican Party or on our platform committee. No matter what the platform says, not a single mind will be changed. Attempting to bind many of our candidates to a position they cannot support does only harm. The Democrats made a mistake on this issue by improperly binding all of their candidates to a rigid point of view. There is no need for us to repeat it. The inclusion of an anti-abortion plank in the Republican platform would be a tragic mistake for our minority party and for our candidates. For this reason, we have filed this minority report. In our deliberations of this minority report, the suggestion was made that we select women speakers, as the abortion issue is a women's issue. Obviously, it takes a man, too. Therefore, I yield the remainder of our allotted time to Dr. George Wood, delegate from Maine and representative of the Platform Committee. Thank you.
That was primarily the position of the anti-abortion or the pro-abortion people, at least the anti-abortion amendment. It seems that the Reagan's chances for presidential nomination are considered finished by a lot of people on the floor of this convention hall, and Mike Wallace is finding a movement on the floor to put him on the Ford ticket now as a vice presidential nominee. Mike?
And one of the leaders of that movement is Gil Carmichael of the state of Mississippi, who backs President Ford. Do I understand, Mr. Carmichael, there is a real move afoot in certain southern delegations and not so southern delegations?
Not so southern, that's right.
Would you explain just what is going on?
Well, this Mississippi delegation wants a Ford-Reagan ticket in the worst way.
That's understood.
That's right. And tomorrow night, I think we're coming out on the unit rule, and we're going to show that unity vote for the two people. I've talked to people in the Florida delegation. I've talked to people in the Illinois delegation. I've talked to people in the Ohio delegation. I've talked to people in the Pennsylvania delegation, and they all want a Ford-Reagan ticket. Now, both of these men, President Ford and Governor Reagan, have made two significant statements to our delegation.
What's that?
The first one was that President Ford, and he said this publicly in Mississippi, that he was going to poll the convention delegates and find out who they wanted for vice president. I know what that poll shows, and it shows Governor Reagan.
Right.
Governor Reagan said to the Mississippi delegation today in our caucus this afternoon that he thought the convention delegates had the right to choose the vice presidency.
Yes, but Governor Reagan has said over and over and over again, no, no, no.
That's right. I understand that, and that was a proper thing for him to do. But this vote tonight, the 16C vote, was a Ford-Reagan vote, and President Ford won it. But Governor Reagan is so strong that the Ford-Reagan people in this delegation are coming together.
Well, I can understand what you're saying, but you're just going to have to persuade Governor Reagan, apparently, of that.
I think Governor Reagan said that he would listen to a mandate. I heard that when he said that today to the Mississippi delegation.
Well,
now, he's pretty aggravated with me sometimes, but these convention delegates are entitled to be listened to, and both men have got to listen to us.
And what you're saying is that Governor Reagan owes it to the party?
That's right. And President Ford owes it to the party. And this party, if it goes home with a Ford-Reagan ticket, will give the American people a philosophical choice they've never had before.
Well, they certainly will have that.
That's right.
Gil Carmichael, leader of the Ford delegation inside this Mississippi delegation, for Ford-Reagan, Walter.
Congresswoman Millicent Fenwick, New Jersey, just stepped up to talk for this amendment, and let's listen.
I support the efforts of those who seek an enactment of a constitutional amendment to restore protection to the rights for unborn children. The Republican platform should speak to this. Please vote no on this minority report. I yield to Mr. Mike Antonovich of the Assembly of California.
Fellow Republicans, let us look beyond the political advantages the pro-life philosophy has for the Republican Party and to the essence of this issue, the creation of a human being.
That was not Millicent Fenwick. I'm trying to get the lady identified for you in just a moment. She was a spokesman, obviously, of for the abortion amendment banning abortion. Now, Bill Plant is with Nelson Rockefeller. Let's go down there for a moment quickly.
Walter, Vice President Rockefeller is here with us. Mr. Vice President, can you tell us the decision on whether or not to oppose the morality and foreign policy plank?
Well, I think after considerable discussion, it dawned on everybody that what's been expressed in this plank is in actual fact the basis on which foreign policy has been conducted successfully for the last 8 years.
So you're not going to oppose it?
No, just make the statement that this is the basis on which foreign policy has been conducted for the last 8 years, and this is what has resulted in peace.
But, Mr. Rockefeller, all of us have considered this plank to be implicitly critical of the President and Mr. Kissinger's foreign policy.
Well, you see, it all depends on how you take it. If you take it as a criticism, then you could take it that way. But if you really stop to think and analyze it, what they say is exactly what's been done.
So you're taking it that way just and you're not opposing?
By explaining that this is exactly the basis on which it's been conducted. So that brings everybody together.
Thank you very much, Vice President Rockefeller. Walter?
Nice to be with you.
A moment ago, we heard from Frances Weideman. That's who I identified mistakenly as Millicent Fenwick. She's an Alabama delegate speaking against the minority report. Here is another speaker against the report.
Families that I care for in a small New England city. There have been occasions during this quarter century when one of these very fine individuals has sought my help and advice when facing this particular problem. The alternatives are discussed, and most of the time the family is involved. The decision, however, is made by the patient and the physician. This is a medical decision, not a political decision. And finally, as I look about at these thousands of hearty souls who've stayed together these many hours, I am sure there are families which you represent that have already faced or will face this very profound personal crisis.
This is George Wood from Maine speaking for the minority amendment.
Their positions, the alternatives to resolve it. It is the least we can do for them at this moment. Thank you very much.
Repeating, that was Dr. George Wood. He's from Maine, speaking for the minority amendment, which would knock out of the platform the proposition that the Republican Party support an amendment banning abortion.
Because there won't be any more important issue that you vote on. And I hope you consider it in that vein.
This is Representative Bowman of Maryland speaking against the minority report.
They have repudiated with it Democrats, Catholics, Jews, and Protestants who believe that the unborn children of this nation have a right to live. Is this a moral issue? You bet it is! The Republican Party more than a century ago was born on a moral issue. Whether or not a black man was a slave, and the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in the Dred Scott decision that a black man was no more than personal property. That court was wrong, and this court was wrong when it said that the unborn had no right to live. Are we in this nation to follow the path of Nazi Germany and consign people to death because they are too expensive to let them live? I say no. And I say to you, repudiate this minority report, support the platform committee, and vote for the right to life. That's the only position our party can have.
Yield the floor for 1 minute to Georgia Peterson of the Utah delegation.
Mr. Chairman, I speak in opposition to the minority report for the following reasons. 1, The Human Rights Committee, after much testimony, voted 13-1 for the position as stated in the platform report. 2, the platform committee as a whole voted overwhelmingly to support the platform position. We protest the Supreme Court's intrusion into the family structure through its denial of parents' obligations and rights to guide our minor children. We support a constitutional amendment to restore protection of the right of the life of the unborn child. Mr. Pickering.
The present Supreme Court decisions of the United States deny to the Congress and to the state legislatures the right to limit abortions.
It's the Mississippi delegate Charles Pickering speaking against the minority report.
Liberal state as far as abortion is concerned, our nation and the world. Senator Bob Dole recently said, I feel very strongly that the majority of those who identify with our party's philosophy, if not with its name, want the abortion issue settled, and the issue is a constitutional amendment for living life. Let us have a living Constitution. The issue will not go away, and I urge you to vote no on the minority report.
For what purpose does the delegate from New Jersey, Congresswoman Fenwick, seek recognition?
Well, this is Millicent Fenwick.
All time has expired, and the previous question is
Fenwick.
ordered. The amendment is offered by Ms. Peckham of Wisconsin to the platform as read by Governor Ray and the members of the Resolutions Committee. The amendment would delete certain language which refers to abortion. Those who favor the deletion of the language will vote aye on the amendment. Those who favor retaining the language as set forth in the platform will vote no. The chair is prepared to put the question, and the vote will be by voice vote. So all those in favor of the amendment of the delegate from Wisconsin will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed will signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
So,
the noes have it, and it is so ordered.
And so, remaining in the Republican platform is a plank that puts the Republicans on record as favoring a constitutional amendment to ban abortion. And now get to the second and last of the minority planks that are being proposed by conservatives and with the support of the Reagan forces for a minority plank on foreign policy. One that would criticize détente, the Helsinki Agreement between the United States, the Soviet Union, and other nations on human rights, would be against any secret compacts, would praise Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And here he's reading it to us now.
The printed platform to the prologue on the section Foreign Policy, National Defense, and International Economic Policy add the following. Morality in foreign policy. The goal of Republican foreign policy is the achievement of liberty under law and a just and lasting peace in the world. The principles by which we act to achieve peace and to protect the interests of the United States must merit the restored confidence of our people. We recognize and commend that great beacon of human courage and morality, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, for his compelling message that we must face the world with no illusions about the nature of tyranny. Ours will be a foreign policy that keeps this ever in mind. Ours will be a foreign policy which recognizes that in international negotiations we must make no undue concessions that in pursuing détente we must not grant unilateral favors with only the hope of getting future favors in return. Agreements that are negotiated, such as the one signed in Helsinki, must not take from those who do not have freedom the hope of one day gaining it. Finally, we are firmly committed to a foreign policy in which secret agreements hidden from our people will have no part. Honestly, openly, and with firm conviction, we shall go forward as a united people to forge a lasting peace in the world based upon our deep belief in the rights of man, the rule of law and guidance by the hand of God.
The chair wishes to advise the delegates of the procedure we shall follow in acting upon the amendment to the report of the Committee on Resolutions. The chair should first state that both Senator Roman Hruska and Delegate Dick Obenshain, who has offered the amendment, have mutually agreed to this procedure. Debate on the amendment will be limited to 20 minutes, which will be equally divided between Chairman Ray and Mr. Obenshain. They may each use their time as they see fit, using it all themselves or yielding time to other speakers. When all time is elapsed, the question before the convention will be the adoption of the amendment to the report of the Committee on Resolutions. If there is no objection to the procedure as outlined by the chair, we shall proceed. The chair hears none, and it is so ordered. The chair now recognizes Mr. Obenshain to open debate.
Richard Obenshain is former co-chairman of the Republican National Committee, former state party chairman of Virginia, the Reagan delegate from Virginia, an attorney by profession.
I rise at this late hour to urge you to support an amendment entitled Morality in Foreign Policy. This amendment is a proposal not to delete or subtract from this great Republican platform, but to strengthen this platform by adding a strong positive statement based upon fundamental moral principles. This statement will serve as a blueprint for the future conduct of American foreign policy. It will also unify our nation behind these fundamental principles. We cannot ignore, having been sent to this convention by grassroots Republicans all across this country, the profound concern that our foreign policy be conducted openly, that fundamental commitments to freedom be preserved across the world. 200 years ago, Thomas Jefferson of Virginia lit the flame of freedom. For 200 years, the United States of America has kept that flame aloft, signifying to all the world our belief that all men were destined to live in freedom. Today, 200 years after Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Solzhenitsyn has come from the Soviet Union to identify for us the fundamental difference that still exists between tyranny and freedom. And he has shown us that just as 200 years ago, the love and yearning for freedom still burns brightly in the hearts of people all across the world. Ladies and gentlemen, this amendment would establish a moral foundation for American foreign policy, and it would regain the respect of the nations of the world and work to restore confidence in the American people. Mr. Chairman, I would like to yield for 1.5 minutes to speak on behalf of this amendment to Mr. James Baxter, a delegate from Delaware.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I am Jim Baxter, a farmer from Sussex County, Delaware, the first state. I know that my oratory cannot come up to the eloquent speeches that we've had this week, because you see, I've learned my oratory many years ago looking at the south end of a mule going north. But I say this, back home, we folks believe in this plank of this platform. Caesar Rodney, dying of cancer, rode from Delaware to Philadelphia to give us the Declaration of Independence. As a member of the Platform Committee and an uncommitted delegate, I ask you to share my thoughts for just a moment. This is a compromise of words to add a small plank to make a solid platform. Yes, we farmers are concerned about foreign policy, and I ask you, read the last 4 paragraphs. They show encouragement. They show fellowship, determination, and firmness. I well remember the Yalta of World War II that has given us the Berlin of today. We must not make these kind of undue concessions. We talk of sunshine reform in our platform. We cannot have secret agreements. We must be honest. That is morality. We all want high morality in our homes, and we say on our platform that we want high morality in our federal government. Therefore, we must have high morality in our foreign policy. Please, I beg of you, let's adopt this so that we can bring 2 almost equal groups together so that we can win in November. Thank you. I return the floor to Mr. Obashan.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to yield the floor for 1.5 minutes to a distinguished former state senator from West Virginia and a delegate from West Virginia, Louise Leonard.
Hello. I am Louise Leonard of West Virginia, and I want to speak in support of morality in foreign policy and to add additional strength to our party platform, which I believe truly expresses the mood of America. We take our freedom for granted, but people in many foreign countries do not know freedom as we know it. And one man whose name is known to all of us is Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the man of courage and author of Nobel Prize winner, who, having won his personal battle for political freedom, now desires to tell the free world of his struggle for survival against tyranny. He has become a symbol of the struggle for human freedom. With stunning clarity, he has brought to us warnings of the determination, the cunning, the resourcefulness of those who would dominate the world. And now a word about the final act of the Helsinki Conference signed on August 1st, 1 year ago. We applaud the humanitarian sections of that document, but we are concerned that other sections might raise misunderstandings about our foreign policy, a policy which has always supported the aspirations of freedom-loving people everywhere. We are concerned about the statements in the final act of the Helsinki Conference which say that the post-World War II boundaries of many Eastern European countries are now confirmed as inviolable unless changed by peaceful means. This raises misunderstandings about our foreign policy, which has supported the aspirations of freedom-loving people, and by which we have beamed messages of hope to them for more than 30 years by way of the Voice of America.
Even as this debate goes on, compromise efforts on the report to avoid perhaps a vote at all have continued. Bruce Morton has a report. Bruce?
Walter, Odie Fish, the convention manager, just told us that they reached a compromise, and it's the simplest compromise of all. The compromise is that when all the people speaking in favor of this new foreign policy plank are finished, Roman Hruska, who's the manager for the platform proper, for the status quo, will stand up and say he accepts it. He thinks it's a fine plank. Everybody will approve it by voice vote, and everybody will go home. Walter?
That seems very simple, almost too simple, doesn't it, Bruce?
Well, we've had, as you know this evening, a lot of on and off guidance about this thing, and yes, they have a compromise. No, they don't. The word this time is positive, which isn't to say that it can't come unstuck somewhere along the way. But we think that they have a compromise, and we think that what it is that the Ford people, feeling pleased with their victory on this session's one roll call, simply decided to take the easy way out.
It's been said all along by the Ford people that they don't find anything really objectionable in this minority report. It's really been thought that very possibly they would lay off even before they won that test vote tonight.
Yeah, I think that's right. They had certainly nothing to gain by fighting this. It's popular. It's mildly worded enough to draw some swing people, and it seems to me they had nowhere to go but down, pressing for a vote on it.
Right. And now what was probably the final speaker, or maybe well be the final speaker for the minority report, Congressman Philip Crane of Illinois, a Reagan delegate here. Senator Griffin of the Ford forces is with Leslie Stahl now. Leslie?
Walter, I'm standing here with Senator Griffin. Senator, I have been following some conservatives around the floor all night who've been trying to see if they can accept the compromise language on this foreign policy plank offered by the Ford camp. They have not accepted, and now it seems that you're just caving in, just giving in totally to this language, which seems to be a strong anti-Kissinger plank. Why are you accepting this language?
Well, let's start, first of all, with the fact that 90% of this verbiage is unobjectionable. The goal of the Republican foreign policy is achievement of liberty under law, and a just and lasting peace in the world, and so on and so on. We agree with it. There's about 10% of it here that we'd like to rearrange if we could. We're in a procedural bind. Under the rules that we adopted, in order to offer amendments, you got to go to the platform committee, you got to get 25% support. We can't do that. So it's a question, are you going to fight 5 or 10% of it, or are you going to go along with 90% of it? And we've decided to do that in the interest of party unity and harmony.
Senator Griffin, this plank was written specifically as an attack on the administration. It was written by a group of conservatives. You don't read it that way.
No, we put a different interpretation on it. We actually think that, generally speaking, that we've been conducting a very successful foreign policy. We've brought peace to the United States, and we don't interpret it like they would interpret it.
Senator, is this an attempt at party unity? Is that what we're seeing here?
Yes. We'd like to go home united here tonight, and hopefully tomorrow night, too.
Are you concerned that if you leave here without making some accommodation on this, that the party can never be brought back together again? Is that what this is?
Well, it would be divisive if we made a fight over this. I think most people reading this language would agree with it. And the implications in some paragraphs and sentences and so forth are not good, but overall there's nothing wrong with it.
Thank you very much. No fight on foreign policy. Walter?
You know, implicit in this plank on morality and foreign policy, which now the Ford people are going to accept as we hear it, is criticism of Secretary of State Kissinger. The delegates at this convention should not have too much trouble agreeing with that. I'll finish that statement in just a moment. Let's listen to Senator Hruska.
Among us on the pending amendment, diverse views were expressed and considered. The conclusion was reached that in the interest of party unity and harmony, we will not oppose this amendment. We will not oppose this amendment because it is the basis upon which the Republican administrations have successfully conducted the foreign policy of the United States during the past 8 years. A foreign policy which has brought peace to America. Mr. Chairman, I ask for a voice vote upon expiration or yielding back of the scheduled time when that vote is taken. I shall vote aye when that vote is taken. I recommend that the delegates of the convention do likewise. Thank you.
And there it is. That's the compromise agreement. In other words, there's no compromise in that the Ford forces are simply giving in.
By the platform committee, the chair will put the question. All in favor of the amendment will say aye. Opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and it is so ordered.
Convention tonight that undoubtedly now will adjourn until tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock Central Time.
I will not call the chaplain to dismiss this convention.
This was almost a 9-hour session here tonight of the Republican Party in its second night, a session which saw a critical test vote won by the forces of President Ford. Ronald Reagan was defeated, and it's the general opinion of most of those here, apparently, that his long campaign to unseat the incumbent president has failed here in Kansas City. I was saying a moment ago that implicit in that plank on morality and foreign policy that has now been passed and has been approved by the convention is criticism of Secretary of State Kissinger, and the Ford people did not fight to prevent that. The delegates of this convention should not have too much trouble agreeing with that minority plank, and they apparently didn't. A CBS News delegate survey showed that 52% of those here believe that Kissinger should be replaced. 40% defended him, and about 8% had no opinion. On the other hand, that abortion plank, which was approved tonight, the delegates successfully voted to keep the anti-abortion plank in the platform, you know, but that does not reflect the sentiments of the Republican rank and file. According to a CBS News New York Times poll earlier this year, it found that Republicans, by a margin of more than 4-1, believe a woman and her doctor should have the right to decide on the subject of abortion. But now the party says in its platform for 1976 that it supports a constitutional amendment which would ban abortion. The convention has voted just now to adopt the full platform report, and that bit of business is completed. The only thing left but for this convention to do is to nominate its slate for the 1976 presidential election. Tomorrow night that occurs before this convention of the Republican Party in Kansas City, Missouri. Eric Severide and Bill Moyers have undoubtedly some thoughts about the way things went here in the Kemper Arena tonight. Gentlemen?
Well, there's another clear division here, of course, with the Carter Democrats on the abortion problem. Republicans endorse the idea of a constitutional amendment not to prevent abortion on demand. Quite the opposite from the Democrats. But, Bill, I wouldn't think there's much chance of 2/3 of the states ever adopting such an amendment to the Constitution, would you?
I think it seems unlikely, although in some of the states in recent months there have been some decisions by the state legislatures to overturn previous passage of a constitutional amendment. But it seems to me a long shot. I've been trying to think of the political impact in November of that vote on abortion.
Catholic vote and all that.
Yes, but the polls show that there is no broad consensus, as Walter was just suggesting, for a constitutional amendment to reverse the Supreme Court decision. About half of the Catholics in the country, according to these polls, are concerned about abortion, but not all of these would make it an issue. And I suppose what was going on here was not only a tip of the hat to those who do think it's a deep moral issue, but an effort in November to bring out that passionate minority that can sometimes make a significant difference in a close election.
In certain parts of the country, sir.
Yes.
The other thing that's been accepted by the Ford people is this foreign policy amendment, saying in effect our foreign policy has not been conducted on a moral enough basis. American principles of morality and belief in how people should live have not been enough of a part of it. It's been too secretive, Mr. Kissinger. The Ford people have just finessed that. They have to accept it, but they're saying, well, this really is what our policy has been all the time in our approach to foreign policy. When it was read, this amendment, I noticed the word Helsinki was not read, so I don't know if that stays in the text or not. That was more of a direct slap at Kissinger, I suppose, than maybe anything else. The Solzhenitsyn business
It goes back to the fact that he was not invited to the White House by the president when he was in Washington. Kissinger is believed to have given the president that kind of advice, which pretty surely was a mistake. But it's the old problem of how do you conduct foreign policy on a moral basis? It's the notion that governments are persons with the same moral values. The other argument is that governments are not persons, they are agents. They must represent the best interests of the persons who are their clients, and that's the people of the country. This is a long story. We've gone back to Woodrow Wilson and Teddy Roosevelt about the white man's burden and all the rest. It's been the great American problem in conducting diplomacy in this world.
There's no question, Eric, but that many of these delegates tonight were trying to deliver a personal rebuke to Henry Kissinger. They see him as the devil incarnate on these matters of expediency with the Soviet Union. Henry Kissinger owns and operates a ferocious ego, and I suspect that he's been on the phone this evening doing everything he could with his old buddy Nelson Rockefeller to get that rebuke minimized, and he succeeded.
It probably should be added, just before we close here, that this is not the foreign policy of the old Republican Party, the isolationism that Hoover, Taft, Fortress America, etc. represented. It's not that at all. It's a cautiously interventionist kind of foreign policy. It certainly is not the interventionist policy of John Kennedy, who said we'd bear any burden and pay any price to help liberty around the world. It's neither of those things. And Vietnam's the reason it's so cautious.
There are some remarkable similarities in this platform and the Democratic platform.
I think they want it back in the act rule, back to Walter Cronkite.
Gentlemen, we're taking it back because I have on the phone here John Sears, who is the campaign chairman for Ronald Reagan. John, do you agree with the analysis that this test vote pretty well spells the end of the campaign for your man?
Well, there's no doubt that the results of the vote tonight will be interpreted to mean that we have an awfully uphill battle tomorrow. Governor Reagan will have his name placed in nomination tomorrow evening, and we'll go ahead with the rest of the convention. The decisive thing here tonight really happened this afternoon when the Mississippi delegation did, by a very narrow margin, invoke the unit rule in behalf of the Ford position. And what that meant this evening was that delegations all over the country lost Reagan votes in groups of 3s and 4s, in some cases up to 10. So the final result really, unfortunately, didn't adequately describe the closeness of this race.
But I gather then from what you're saying that you really, if I may put it a little more bluntly than you clearly would, you really don't have very much hope now for tomorrow night.
Well, I think that probably tonight's vote certainly didn't help us any, but we'll see you all out here tomorrow.
You're not giving up until the last vote is counted, to coin a cliche. John, what are you going to do between now and the time that the balloting begins tomorrow night to try to redress what happened to you tonight in the test vote?
Well, first of all, I'm going to get some sleep tonight.
If I let you go. And then what?
Well, then, of course, we'll be gathering, as we usually do in the morning, with our field men and take an assessment at that point, and pretty well go on from there. I think we know pretty well where we'd have to get some votes tomorrow, and so we'll be spending our time at that.
Can you tell me where those places are?
Oh, they're all about the same places they have been.
They're in the 2s and 3s again. You're down to that nitty-gritty.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, John Sears, and we'll be seeing your man and you tomorrow night in the last round of this long battle that began in New Hampshire last February.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you, John Sears. John Sears, the campaign manager for Ronald Reagan, saying, as you heard, in effect, that it really is all over for his man. I have to put that interpretation on it. Obviously, no campaign manager is going to say that until that last vote is counted, and that comes tomorrow night when this Republican National Convention reaches the balloting for their presidential candidate of 1976. Ronald Reagan put up quite a fight. There hasn't been anyone like it in the Republican Party, actually since 1884, when the only time an incumbent president in modern times was not given the nomination of his party. Theodore Roosevelt tried it in 1912 to unseat his own protege, William Howard Taft, and he didn't come anywhere near as close as Ronald Reagan has come here. It's not all over yet. There still is the balloting. It is still some 18 or 19 hours away before they get to that balloting. Miracles could happen, but as you heard from the lips of John Sears himself tonight, it doesn't seem to look like it's going to go that way. No miracles for Ronald Reagan. They're going to keep trying, but it doesn't look very hopeful. The party has come to this point on this Wednesday morning. It convenes again at 7 o'clock tonight, Eastern Time, or Central Time, rather, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll, of course, be here. We'll have a wrap-up of the developments during the day on the CBS Evening News. And, of course, if anything does break tomorrow in Kansas City of great import, CBS News will be on the air. This is Walter Cronkite at our CBS News Convention headquarters in Kansas City. Good morning.
This has been a CBS News special report. Campaign 76. This morning, the third session of the Republican National Convention from the Kemper Arena in Kansas City.